This case raises a lot of questions, especially only one that really concerns me. And what kind of question that is, you will know in this video. Hello everybody, this is Anna and this is my new true crime case video. And this one is a little bit crazy, like any other cases of course, but I think it's really important that we know about this story of this man that was going through a lot in his life, but he just couldn't handle his feelings and his past. He couldn't let it go. So that kind of destroyed him. So here we go. The case is about John Wayne Gacy, and he was convinced of the torture, rape, and murder of 33 males between 1972 until his arrest in 1978. He was also called Killer Clown and Pogo the Clown because before he was performing in child parties and hospitals, kids' hospitals, as Pogo the Clown. Now let's get into his story about his childhood, about his life, and what led to the events that happened in the end. So John Gacy was born on March 17th, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. He was the second of 3 children, and also he was the only boy in the family. Since John Wayne was 4, he was brutally abused by his father. But whatever was happening, it was not a big problem for Gacy. He was actually really admiring and loving his father, which is really understandable because for boys in their childhood it's very important to have a father figure, but unfortunately it was not a good one for Gacy. When Gacy was 7 years old, he went through another tragedy of his life. He was molested repeatedly by the friend of the family. So during his school years, he was diagnosed with congenital heart condition, and it really limited his physical activity and ability to do anything like normal kids would do, like go for a run, jogging, run around with his friends, and he couldn't do anything like that. So he became chubby, he became very overweight, and it was another reason for his father to mock him and say that you're lazy, you're fat, and all of that, which is really tragical. So when Gacy was 11, he was hospitalized because of his blackouts, which was happening very repeatedly, and nobody really knew why it was happening. And of course his father, he said that Gacy was just faking it because doctors, they just couldn't understand the reason of his blackouts. So for his father, it meant, okay, if there is no reason for that, then it has to be fake. So during 5 years of his in and out of the hospital, in and out from school, he decided to drop out from school because he was so far behind that there was no reason for him to even be in school. And again, it was another reason, one more reason for his dad to call him now stupid. When John Wayne was 18, he became a part of the Democratic Party, where his father was as well. And he really started to get very social, and he started to get on top. So people were listening to him, they were admiring him actually. But he, of course, again, Gacy's father was like, no, I don't like that. So he made Gacy leave the Democratic Party, and also he called him a party patsy. And in the end of the day, Gacy thought that he's had enough and he has to leave. So he left to Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, Gacy worked in an ambulance, and he was quickly transferred to mortuary, where he was employed as an attendant. He was spending a lot of nights alone in this mortuary next to the embalming room. So at the last night of Gacy's spending night in this mortuary, he came into the box with the body of a young boy, a teenage boy, and he started to molest this body, and he freaked out from himself. So he decided, okay, well, I don't know what to do with that, and he decided to come back home. He called his mother, and of course she said yes, so he came back home to Chicago. So being in Chicago, he really wanted to forget all this story in mortuary, and he was doing pretty well with this actually. And despite his dropout from school, he was accepted at Northwestern Business College, where he graduated in 1963. And he was transferred to Springfield, Illinois, and he was promoted to a management position. There he met his future wife, Marilyn Myers. She was employed at the same store and worked in the same department as Gacy. After 9 months of dating, they got married. During his first year in Springfield, he became a part of JC's, and he came onto the top real quick, and he was a big man in JC's. And in April 1964, he was awarded the title of Key Man there. And only next year, right after that, in 1965, he was promoted as a vice president, and also he was called third most outstanding JC in the state of Illinois. So you can see that he was having a pretty good life. He was married. He was like one of the best men in JC's. What else can you want and desire? But it was not enough for him. He was still having this need to be involved with the young men, with teens sexually. So after being in Springfield, Marilyn, his wife, and Gacy himself, they decided to move to Waterloo, Iowa, where Gacy managed the 3 restaurants of Kentucky Fried Chicken owned by Marilyn's father. And they started to live in Marilyn's parents' house, of course rent-free. Gacy, of course, became a part of JC's in Waterloo now, and he became a vice president there as well. And he received a recognition in 1967 as outstanding vice president of the Waterloo JC, and earned a seat on the board of directors. But unfortunately, the Waterloo JCs had a bad and dark side in their community. They were actually participating in wife swapping, prostitutes, pornography, drug use, everything like that. It was really pleasing for Gacy, and he also started to act on his desires with being with the male teens who he was finding at the place that he worked, that he managed at Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants. Because of course there are usually teenagers working to get some money for college or something like that. So it was really easy for him to find some boys to have sex with. So you would ask, okay, where he was having fun with boys. Actually, it was in the basement of his own house where he lived with Marilyn and their two children that they had, a boy and a girl. And he really made his basement as a hangout kind of place. He was luring teens into his basement, saying to them that he had pornography and free alcohol. And of course, being teenagers, they said yes, okay, of course. And he was giving them a lot of cheap alcohol so they would become intoxicated easily and quickly. So then he would take sexual advantage of them. And of course, because they were too drunk, they couldn't put any resistance. So in August 1967, Gacy hired a 15-year-old Donald Voorhees to do odd jobs around his house. And as soon as Donald was finished, Gacy proposed to him to have some drinks in the basement. And again, he tried to have oral sex with the boy. So after that, Gacy was like, wow, I really can do this, with some random boys. He was abusing a lot of other teenage boys after Donald. But in March 1968, it all started to crash down because Donald is this 15-year-old guy. He told his father, who was also part of JC's, about what happened. And of course, they went to the police. And then right after that, another 16-year-old boy came to the police. Gacy was arrested and put in jail for 10 years, where he became very popular again because he could do this. He could really kind of control people and play with their minds somehow, so he could be again on top. He could be a very important guy even in jail. So he became a chef, in the kitchen, and he was even giving interviews at Christmas to some of the TV station. And he actually served only 18 months in prison. So being in jail, Gacy received news that his father deceased. And it really completely broke Gacy, because he really wanted to prove to his father while he was alive that he could do a lot of things. He could be a very good son, but it was too late. So Gacy was really upset because of that. And also, Marilyn filed for divorce, which was really heartbreaking for him too. But then, when he was set free for parole after only 18 months of being in jail, he decided, okay, I'm just gonna move and I'm gonna live my life as I wanted to. So Gacy decided to come back to Chicago to his mother, and later he bought a home 30 miles from Chicago in Des Plaines, Illinois. Gacy and his mother lived in the house, which was part of the terms of Gacy's probation. In early February 1971, Gacy again tried to find a boy. He found a boy. And he tried to rape him, but the boy escaped and went to the police. But all the charges were dropped because the boy failed to show up in court. And the funny thing is, this news did not come to his parole officer, which is very weird. I was asking myself, how could it happen? Do you have any idea? Let me know down in the comments, please, because I'm really curious about that. Let's talk about his first murder. On January 2nd, 1972, Timothy Jack McCoy, a 16-year-old boy, he decided to sleep on the bus terminal in Chicago, because his bus was coming only the next morning. So Gacy found him, he offered him free alcohol, and also he offered him to sleep in his house. And of course, Timothy said yes. So they slept together, and the next morning, Gacy woke up seeing Timothy in his room with a knife in his hand. So Gacy thought that Timothy wanted to kill him, and he started to attack Timothy, and he took out the knife and he killed Timothy. But then when he came to the kitchen, he saw that this boy was just cooking breakfast, and he just wanted to wake Gacy up and tell him that he cooked some breakfast. But it was too late. Later on, when Gacy was questioned after another events that I will tell you about in the video, he said that he had a big sexual pleasure while he was killing Timothy, until even the point of orgasm, which is completely crazy. He decided to hide Timothy's body under his house, under Gacy's house, in the crawl space. And that was the place where he would hide almost all of his victims afterwards. On July 1st, 1972, Gacy decided to marry his high school sweetheart, Carol Hoff. She and her 2 daughters from a previous marriage moved into Gacy's home. In the meantime, as Gacy added more bodies in the crawl space under his house, a horrible stench, a horrible smell began to spread around his house, and neighbors told him that, hey, you need to do something about it. In 1974, Gacy left his construction job and started to work in painting, decorating, and maintenance, or PDM Contractors Incorporation. Gacy told his friends that he was planning to hire teenage boys, so he will keep down his costs, because it's much cheaper to hire somebody very young than somebody experienced, right? So it was, in the other hand, in his mind, he thought that it will be easier for him to lure boys into his house and rape them again. He would invite these boys that would answer his ads about available job, and he would invite them into his house for an interview, and of course he would overpower them and tried to rape them, and most of the times it would end up by the death of the boy. The funny thing is, during the daytime, he was a very nice man. Everybody loved him. His neighbors, they would always invite him to their parties. He would dress up like a clown. He would be very nice to them, to everybody. And he was a do-gooder, really. But as soon as the night would come, he would become this monster that would rape and kill teenage boys. In October 1975, Carol, his wife, filed for a divorce because Gacy pleaded to her that he was attracted to males. And she said that it was not a surprise for her. She actually said that months before, on Mother's Day, he had informed her that they would not have any sexual intercourse anymore. And also she would find a lot of gay porn magazines, and it would be a lot of males, like young males, in the house all the time. So it was very suspicious for her, and so she was not really surprised. So from 1976 to 1978, Gacy had managed to hide the bodies of 29 of his victims under his house in the crawl space. And after that, where there was no space anymore and there was like huge smell coming out from the house, he dumped 4 of his victims into the one. So let's talk about his famous victim that put an end into this whole story. He was called Robert Peast. He was a 15-year-old boy that met Gacy on December 11th, 1978 in Des Moines. He said to his mother that came to the pharmacy where he worked to pick him up that he would come back. He would just talk to the construction contractor about the summer job, and he was very excited about that. So she was waiting for him, and he never came back afterwards. When Peast failed to come back home, his parents went to the police and filed a missing person report. The pharmacy owner told investigators that the contractor that came to talk to Peast was in fact John Gacy. So John admitted that he was in the pharmacy, but he completely refused to admit that he ever spoke to Peast. And just because Gacy was very weird and police and investigators were very suspicious of him, they decided to run a check on his criminal activities in the past, and all of his past, all the charges and the prison sentence came back up. So he tried to deny everything, but in the end of the day it wasn't really working. Plus, the other thing came up. The co-worker of Peast told the mother of him that the day that Peast disappeared, she asked him to give her the jacket of his for her break to go out and get something to eat. So he did, and when she came back, she gave him back the jacket, and the receipt was actually there. Now keep that in mind. It's a very important piece of information. So on December 13, 1978, a warrant to search Gacy's Summerdale Avenue home was granted. So investigators found a lot of teenage clothes that wouldn't fit Gacy, and a lot of stuff like 2 driving licenses that didn't belong to Gacy, handcuffs, child pornography, police badges, guns and ammunition, a switchblade, a piece of stained carpet, hair samples from Gacy's automobiles, store receipt, and several items of teen-style clothing in sizes that would not fit Gacy. This is the receipt. They found it, but they didn't, at the time, they didn't know who this receipt belonged to. And only a little bit later, the story about this receipt came up. 2 surveillance teams were assigned to watch Gacy 24 hours a day. And of course, they came into the crawl space, but they didn't find anything. And they quickly went away because of the smell. When all of this started to come up, Gacy started to freak out, and the last day, the day of his arrest, actually, he was going to his friends' houses and saying them goodbyes. He was also seen taking pills and drinking like mid-morning or something like that, like very early. So he knew that he would be arrested. When he was arrested, another second search warrant came because investigators got some information from the employees of Gacy, and they told him that he was asking them to dig some trenches in the crawl space. When they got into the crawl space, even the most experienced investigators were completely shocked of what they've seen. Knowing that police found everything, every evidence that they needed Gacy to go in jail, he decided to confess. And he said that the total of the murders that he committed could be as high as 45. During his confession, he decided to tell them how he was doing this. So He said that he had restrained his victims by pretending to do a magic trick, which required that they put on handcuffs. He then stuffed socks or underwear into their mouths and used a board with chains, which he would place under their chest, then rubbed the chains around their neck. He would then choke them to death while raping them. Gacy went on trial on February 6, 1980 for the murder of 33 young men because they found only 33 bodies. His defense tried to prove that Gacy was insane, mentally insane, but of course the jury didn't believe it. Gacy was proven guilty and given the death penalty by lethal injection. While on death row, Gacy continued to taunt authorities with different versions. He was always changing his stories just to stay alive. So on May 9th, 1994, he was executed by lethal injection. And his last words were, "Kiss my ass." But well, you never know who is walking around you. Like, everybody loved him. Look at this. They always thought that he was an amazing man, but it was not true. He was a monster, and he was hiding it very well. And thank God, it's very sad. It's very, very sad that the young boys had to die, especially the priest. But thank God they got him, and they found all the evidence, because who knew? And who knows if he would still be doing this today. Yeah, he would be very old now, but you never know, really. So please let me know what you think about this story. For me, it was very fascinating. I was thinking about it a lot. And please leave a comments down below. Share your thoughts with me, please. It's very important. Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you will get a notification about my new uploads. I upload new videos every week. So leave a like if you really liked it and enjoy my content, and I'll see you soon next week. Bye bye.